CNN's Donnie O'Sullivan got in the cage with former UFC star turned podcaster Jake Shields to explore the Manosphere and why exactly it's so popular.
They speak liberal, they have liberal friends, and then they go online and they are a white supremacist.
This is Vera Papasova. She spent the last year dating far-right men in New York City for a story for Cosmopolitan magazine.
Being far-right in New York City? I didn't even know that was a thing. Do they even have those? Being far-right in New York City is like being the straightest guy at a Katy Perry concert. It's like, you know, kinda, I guess.
They're the most insecure men I've ever sat down with.
Oh,
it was really
brother.
difficult to have some of these dates because they were so insecure, because they don't really know who they are and they don't know how to figure that out.
She said the men she dated got all their news and information from the so-called Manosphere.
They did not listen to anything else. They're only listening to independent media, and they're only listening to men talking to men.
Oh, CNN is talking about and shaming men for listening to independent media. Maybe we should come back and start listening to CNN again. And I pulled this girl up on Instagram, and she works for Cosmopolitan. Are you talking about the literal propaganda, the self-admitted propaganda? The magazine where the main publicist of the magazine in the 90s came out as she got older and said that she faked data and statistics in order to promote a more Sex in the City lifestyle. So literal propaganda.
I wrote for Cosmo for about 20 years. I was trained very well to be a good reporter, and then I immediately fell from grace and started writing lies for Cosmopolitan magazine. Helen Gurley Brown had created a list of rules on how to write for Cosmo, and some of those rules included how to make up stories. So here's one of them. Unless you are a recognized authority on a subject, profound statements must be attributed to somebody appropriate, even if the writer has to invent the authority.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And you're saying that they should be following non-independent media? They should be watching the mainstream media again? Like, this is absolute nonsense. You're talking about a girl here who's obviously a feminist. In her picture, it says radical self-love. Like, I don't know anybody who actually has confidence that talks about radical self-love. This is all nonsense, bro. We've had male media for maybe 5 years, and everybody's panicking. This is just a place where guys go to talk about things that other places don't talk about. There was never a space for guys to talk about these issues, and now there is.
Macho podcasters and influencers.
There's no such thing as an independent female.
Most women have zero concept of like money.
Females don't have independent thought.
It's a space where UFC fighters are among those who reign supreme.
They love the UFC guys. They love the MMA guys because those guys do what they can. They're modern.
This is what I'm talking about, bro. Yeah, that's why you watch the NFL, because they're doing something that I can't. That's why I watch LeBron James, because I can't jump from the free throw line and dunk a basketball. I'm not 6'9". That's the whole point you watch anything. Yes, men like the UFC because we understand that violence is the underlying principle of nature. And just because we built up this nice society with AC and nice buildings, it doesn't mean that the underlying principle of nature isn't violent. And most men want to be capable of defending themselves. Also, the UFC is one of the most fair industries in sports. They even have women fighting during the headlines, and I think that that's pretty impressive. Now, maybe the women don't get paid quite as much because they don't bring in as much of a draw quite as much, but at the same time, guys will cheer for the women that are fighting hard just as much as they cheer for the men that are fighting hard. I took my dad to the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight, which was pretty much just a money grab, to be honest, but there was a fight before that between two women, and it was the most intense fight of the night, and all of the guys in the arena who liked fighting was cheering for the women just as much. This is just one-sided garbage, and people wonder why people don't watch this garbage anymore.
Gladiators, they're badass.
Badass like Jake Shields, a former UFC star turned podcaster.
All right. Now I'm starting to feel nervous. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course.
Who I met at an MMA gym in Las Vegas.
Like all great MMA pros. I've never hit anyone in my life.
I'm not punching back.
Oh my goodness.
No, I sit right here. KO, KO, KO.
This is CNN. Do you miss being full-time pro, like in terms of?
You know, of course I miss it. To go from professional athlete, which is the highest of highs, to retirement.
And I guess the
podcast has helped. You could fall into depression if you just go from the most amazing career where you're famous and spotlights to all of a sudden you're a nobody.
Sure.
Like other podcasters in the Manosphere, Jake regularly hosts controversial guests.
And I named the podcast Fighting Back. I feel like we have to fight back what we're told we're allowed to do. I just don't like to be told you're not allowed to talk to this person. Like, why can't I talk to him? I'm not saying I agree with his ideology, but I should hear what he has to say.
He's hosted the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Today I have a very, very special guest, Dr. David Duke. I knew you're controversial, but I had no idea how controversial.
And Thomas Ruth.
He said he didn't know how controversial the ex-Grand Wizard of the KKK was. Bro, just say you bringing on fringe guests in order to get some more views and to do something a little bit different. These podcasts have always existed, so this isn't a surprise. But saying that you didn't understand how controversial the ex-Grand Wizard of the KKK is, that is crazy.
So, the leader of the white supremacist group, Patriot Front.
Let's go where we disagree a little bit.
Yes, sure.
Let's hit race, because you're a white-only group?
So the organization only allows people of American ethnicity, and all Americans, I believe, come from Europe, so they're white.
The true heirs of the American spirit fight on!
Yeah, no, I understand and talk to these guys, but I've also not brought anyone hateful. If I do, I'm going to be really, really on top of them.
But so you saying that you haven't brought someone hateful on, right? People say, well, you brought on the Grand Wizard of the KKK, you brought on Patriot Front.
Yeah.
They're hateful.
No, I think those are excellent questions, but if people go and watch the actual interviews, I think they would be like, oh, this guy's not near as hateful as if I expect it.
But Vera says hate isn't what the men she dated were really looking for.
Yeah, oftentimes a lot of those guys just want to be left alone, like to do white people stuff. And look, I'm a black dude, bro, and I don't care if you want to get a fringe group of white people together that's white only and do your white people thing. To be quite frank, I don't have an issue with white folks, but I typically hang around black people all the time. So if you a white person and you want a group of white people to get together and do whatever y'all want to do, that's up to y'all. As long as y'all not trying to harm other people, I don't care what you want to do. Y'all want to get in a circle jerk and do whatever you want to do. That ain't got nothing to do with me. As long as you stay over there and don't bring none of that nonsense over to where the black people is, I don't care about it. You just do whatever you want to do.
These guys brought me to a political meeting.
And did they talk about politics?
Barely. They talked about, it was a bunch of men complaining about girlfriends and wives, regurgitating Andrew Tate type of advice about how to train your girlfriend, how to train your wife to be submissive. And so this group was supposed to be a political group, but they're talking about relationship problems. And the fact that that's what most of the time was spent on.
This is absolute nonsense. I know she's making this up because if you've ever gotten together with guys, the last thing we talk about is relationship problems. Do you know how hard it is to know about or to hear about your best friend's relationship problems? There's always that one guy. Don't get me wrong. There's always that one friend that's always talking about a girl that he's with and he's obsessed with this girl, or that he loves this girl, or that, stuff ain't going right with him and a different girl all the time. There's always that one guy. But you're not going to get a group of guys together, especially if they don't know each other very well, and they're going to start talking about issues that they have in past relationships or current relationships. That's just not even real, bro. That's not even the things that men discuss. That's how I know she's making this up.
You don't need to be a neo-Nazi. You need therapy.
The appeal of Jake's podcast speaks to a need among young men in this country that Vera says can't be ignored.
You have to incentivize someone to want to be better. You can't just say, let's make men better. The thing about these guys is their biggest support system is online, but that also is very isolating, and isolation is what breeds hatred.
Groups like Patriot Front offer community, but community based on racism and hate.
People.
What is this idea that isolation breeds hatred? I think it just breeds self-reflection. That's what I do with isolation. If I'm alone, now I think that people should be social. I think it's healthy for you to be social. I don't think it's good for you to just be alone. But I think sometimes when you get a moment to look in the mirror and think about what you actually think and to criticize yourself, it just allows for some self-reflection. I don't see anything wrong with a level of isolation. Actually, I think I've made a lot of the progress in my life by isolating a little bit and getting things done when I need to.
Have to really think about, do you have the capacity to talk to people that you don't agree with? Because that one nice conversation you might have might change someone's day enough to not have to seek out help in an online support group, which is actually a bunch of white supremacists using to talk to people that you don't agree with. Because that one nice conversation you might have might change someone's day enough to not have to seek out help in an online support group, which is actually a bunch of white supremacists using political beliefs as an excuse for how they feel.
Donnie O'Sullivan is here with us now. Donnie, I'm so glad you've done this special. There's so much intrigue around this issue of the Manosphere. And in fact, Trump is going to the UFC tonight. How big of a role does the sport play in the Manosphere?
Hey, Isabel. Yeah, and look, we should point out at the start here, there's tons of guys who are fans, and some women as well, who are fans of the UFC. I have many friends who are fans of the UFC.
Yeah, exactly.
It certainly does not mean, that
Bingo.
if you are a fan of the UFC, you are falling sort of down this rabbit hole.
Exactly, and they try to link all this stuff together because they just want to demonize men and anything that we enjoy. They link it all to some level of neo-Nazism and alt-right and white supremacy and all these things. I'm a black guy, bro. I'm a black guy. Ain't got the Manosphere or whatever guys talk about in more red pill spaces, and when we talk about dating and relationships and trying to motivate each other to be better people in almost every aspect, there is this is not a pipeline to white supremacy, man. Like, it just makes no sense. They're just trying to demonize anything that men are interested in. They don't want to understand it. They just want to group it all together and say that if you watch an Andrew Tate video, all of a sudden you're going to be a white supremacist, even though Andrew Tate is half black. He presents a little bit as white because he's very, very light-skinned, but he's half black.
Hate and white supremacy and everything else. But what we are seeing is that there is this sort of, there is this crossover. The UFC is playing a greater and bigger role, really, in American life. Joe Rogan, who's the world's biggest podcaster, is a UFC commentator. Dana White, who is the founder of the UFC, is a prominent Trump supporter and was recently appointed to the board of Meta by Mark Zuckerberg himself, another big MMA and UFC fan. And actually fighting tonight in Miami, Trump is going to the event. We're not sure if he'll be there for the earlier fights, but fighting tonight in Miami at the UFC event is a fighter by the name of Bryce Mitchell, who recently set up a podcast of his own, and on his debut episode a few months ago, he said that Hitler was a quote-unquote good guy or a great guy. Dana White, the head of the UFC, was quick to condemn.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that's starting to notice things. Can't really say much on YouTube, but I know in the black community, the head of the record labels that sign people that destroy our image on the global scale. And now, don't get me wrong, the black folks that sign to these labels and do the things they want them to do are also sellouts. Don't get me wrong, but I have noticed the pattern of the people who own the record labels that promote these images that are negative of African Americans. Most African Americans do not engage in hood baby mama culture. It's just not real. Most African Americans are law-abiding citizens, not violent criminals. But if you look at the media and if you look at what hip-hop has become, after the influence of, these record labels started to come in, you'll see where we are now. And there are a lot of people that are noticing that the head of the record labels just don't seem to look like black folks.
But, you can just kind of see there where...
And so, yeah, you're going to get more of a rise in this type of stuff. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that people are just noticing patterns, and I'm not saying that means anything. I'm just saying that just seems to be the case right now.
Folks who might be coming into this sport for one reason, are a fan of fighting, and then they're getting exposed to views like Bryce Mitchell's.
Yeah, brother, this is just another CNN psyop, and they want us to care. They want us to care so desperately. They want men to come back, but they want us to come back as what they want us to be, and that is just not a man. So men are just kind of just going, look, we're just going to chill out. Men are hanging out, bro. We can't go to the UFC. We can't go watch two people hit each other hard in football. They want to make that into flag football, damn near. We're playing patty cake on the field. Everything that's masculine, they want to strip it away from us and turn us into these guys that's like the CNN reporter. Nobody wants to look like him. That's why the people are watching UFC and not CNN, because the guys don't want to look like the guy on CNN. They'd much rather look like and behave like the guys in the UFC. Even the raging feminists at the beginning was like, hey, these guys are talented. They're everything every man wants to be. And because they're straight savages, they're beasts. So it seems like she was even admiring their ability to be violent when it's necessary. So yeah, guys are watching that type of stuff because they reflect the behavior and the mentality that more men would rather have. Not this patty cake BS, bro. It's like they're trying to nerf the whole world. Guys are just not interested in what you're pushing anymore. Stop trying to push your psyop on men to be women. It's not gonna work. Guys don't care about some 35-year-old woman dating in New York, still trying to find the right guy. She's gonna meet him and his name is Jesus, and I hope she believes in him, because that's where she's going. But yeah, man, let me know in the comments below if this video was a W or a L, and give me the HBO special as a help brother out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Till next time.